Have you ever felt just completely disconnected from your own body, like a sensation where you're not actually a person walking around in the world, but you're more like I don't know, a brain floating in a jar?
Oh, yeah, like you're observing your own life from behind a thick pane of glass.
Exactly, just totally unmoored.
It is a really profound and frankly unsettling experience.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, I mean, it goes way beyond just a fleeting moment of being tired or distracted.
Right.
For them, it literally becomes their permanent, everyday baseline.
And that exact state of disconnection is the foundation of our deep dive today. We are exploring the groundbreaking work of Dr. Bessel van der Kolk.
Specifically, we're diving into Chapter 6 of his research.
Right. And our mission here is to uncover the incredible, the actual mechanical connections between overwhelming experiences, our physical bodies, and our actual sense of self.
Yeah, because we are going to explore clinical research. We're going to scan the architecture of the brain and listen to some stories of real patients to understand how trauma literally forces the mind to abandon the body.
It's intense stuff, because we're essentially mapping the biology of trauma, right?
Exactly. We're looking at what happens on a neurological level when an individual endures just a completely overwhelming threat, because that allows us to decode those baffling symptoms that linger for years afterward.
Right, like why people react the way they do when the threat is long gone.
Yeah, we have to look at how the brain fundamentally alters its own structure just to survive.
But I want to be clear right up front. The ultimate goal today is not to just leave you stranded in clinical psychology. The destination here is personal transformation.
Absolutely.
We are going to uncover exactly how you can reclaim that lost connection. By the end of our time together, the aim is for you to feel a profound sense of empowerment.
Because that's what this is really all about.
Right. To look at these actionable tools and think, this is who I am becoming. Someone who is fully present, living inside my body, and completely in charge of my own life.
And that empowerment comes directly from understanding the machinery. I mean, once you know how the internal alarm systems have been rewired, you gain the ability to slowly, intentionally wire them back the way they belong.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand how overwhelming experiences alter our biology, we really have to establish a baseline first.
Right, we need a control.
Exactly. We need to look at what is happening inside the mind when it is supposed to be doing absolutely nothing at all.
Yeah, we have to examine the idling brain.
The idling brain, I love that term.
It's fascinating. So in 2004, a neuroscientist named Dr. Ruth Lanius conducted this incredibly illuminating study. And it focused on something called the default state network.
Okay, and what exactly is that?
So it's this specific constellation of brain areas that activate when you have no particular task to focus on, like when you're just zoning out.
Right, when you're not doing a math problem or navigating traffic.
Exactly. To observe this, Dr. Lanius brought two distinct groups of people into her lab. One group consisted of individuals with no history of severe trauma. And the second group was made up of folks who had endured severe chronic abuse during their childhoods.
And the instructions given to these two groups were, seemingly effortless, right?
You'd think so. They simply had to lie down inside an fMRI brain scanner, keep their eyes closed, and think about nothing.
Which is actually surprisingly hard.
Oh, definitely. They were asked to just focus on their breathing. Now, the brain is an incredibly active organ, obviously, and leaving it to idle actually requires a really specific kind of neurological orchestration.
Okay, so what happened when the first group, the ones without trauma histories, just lay there doing nothing?
Well, the imaging showed this vibrant glow in specific regions. The most prominent activity was in the medial prefrontal cortex.
The medial prefrontal cortex, got it.
And this region acts kind of like the brain's watchtower for self-awareness. It registers the visceral, physical sensations of simply being alive.
So it's basically the biological center of feeling, I am here, my chest is rising and falling, I exist.
Precisely. A vibrant, glowing map of physical self-awareness.
But the scans from the second group, the subjects with the severe trauma histories, that told an entirely different story, didn't it?
Oh, the contrast was devastating.
Yeah.
In the traumatized subjects, those critical self-sensing areas, including that medial prefrontal cortex watchtower, they showed almost zero activation. I mean, the screens were essentially dark.
Wow, just dark.
It was a complete neurological blackout in the very regions responsible for knowing who and where you are.
That visual of a dark screen, I mean, that really clarifies the sheer force of a traumatic adaptation because the brain is the ultimate survival machine, right?
Absolutely.
When someone goes through a terrifying event, the physical sensations accompanying that terror, like the racing heart, the shortness of breath, that sheer panic in the gut, they become so overwhelming that they threaten to completely destroy the organism.
Right, it's just too much input.
So to save itself, the brain subconsciously severs the connection. It deadens its own capacity to feel the physical form. It essentially decides that feeling nothing is safer than feeling agony.
Exactly. The system just shuts down the communication lines to cut off the pain.
I always picture it like a house equipped with a very loud fire alarm.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, so imagine one day a fire breaks out and the alarm starts shrieking. But the problem is the fire's never truly put out, so the alarm just keeps blaring day after day, week after week.
That sounds like torture.
Right. The noise becomes so maddening, so totally impossible to live with, that you just march down to the basement and rip the main circuit breaker right out of the wall.
Just kill the power completely.
Exactly. And pulling that breaker absolutely stops the terrible, deafening noise of the alarm. But pulling the main breaker also shuts off the lights. It shuts off the heat. It shuts off the music in the living room and the refrigerator in the kitchen. You've stopped the alarm, but you have left yourself completely in the dark, disconnected from everything that makes the house a home.
What's fascinating here is how absolute that darkness can become. Neurologically, I mean, pulling that circuit breaker doesn't just mute the bad memories, it knocks out the core structures of self-recognition.
So it goes beyond just feeling numb emotionally.
Way beyond. The lack of self-awareness becomes so deeply ingrained that we see trauma survivors who literally cannot recognize their own reflection in a mirror.
Wait, really? Like they literally don't know it's them?
They look at the glass, and their brain just lacks the necessary activation in the medial prefrontal cortex to assemble that visual data and say, that is me.
That is heartbreaking.
The hardware for self-recognition has just been powered down.
But if the power is completely cut to our ability to sense ourselves, how do we navigate the world? Like, how do we make decisions or even figure out what we want out of life?
Well, we lose our agency. Yeah. Agency is that fundamental feeling of being in charge of your own life. It's the internal conviction that you know where you stand, you have a say in what happens to you, and you possess the ability to shape your circumstances.
Right.
And the tragedy of the idling brain shutting down is that when you lose the connection to your physical body, your agency is stripped away right along with it.
Because agency isn't just some abstract philosophical concept, right? It is entirely rooted in our biology.
Completely.
We navigate our lives using interoception, our inner sensory awareness.
Right. Interoception is basically the physiological foundation of intuition.
So it's that tightening in your chest when a situation feels dangerous, or the fluttering in your stomach when you're excited about a new opportunity. We literally read our bodies to understand our environment.
Yes. Moshe Feldenkrais, who was a pioneer in movement therapy, he summarized this so beautifully. He said, you can't do what you want till you know what you're doing.
Wow. That's so simple, but so true.
If your internal compass has been disconnected because you pulled that main circuit breaker, you have no navigational tools. You can't set boundaries or pursue passions because you just can't feel those subtle internal signals telling you what's safe and what's fulfilling.
And ignoring those internal warning signs over a long period, that leads to a pretty serious clinical condition, doesn't it?
It does. It leads to something called alexithymia.
Alexithymia.
Yeah, which translates essentially to emotional blindness. A person with alexithymia becomes entirely unable to sense, identify, and communicate their own internal states.
So they might be in a situation that is making them furious or completely terrified, but on a conscious level, what are they experiencing?
Their mind registers nothing but a blank void. They cannot put words to their feelings because the feelings are no longer reaching the conscious brain.
But the conscious mind going blank doesn't mean the body stops feeling it, right? I mean, the body remembers everything. The body keeps trying to deliver the message, even if the brain refuses to, read the mail.
Oh, absolutely. The physical form will always find a way to make its distress known. Dr. van der Kolk highlights a very compelling case study to demonstrate this.
Right, the story of Sandy.
Yes, Sandy. She was a highly capable visiting nurse, but she had endured a deeply traumatic childhood involving alcoholic parents. She basically grew up feeling chronically terrified and completely unseen.
So how did she cope with that?
To survive that environment, she developed this powerful coping mechanism.
Yeah.
She became totally differential. She learned to entirely ignore her own feelings and just bend to the will of anyone she depended on.
So she survived by basically making her own emotional needs disappear.
Exactly. But her biology refused to remain silent forever. Sandy began suffering from sudden, severe asthma attacks.
And the trigger for these attacks was incredibly specific, wasn't it?
Very specific. They would occur whenever her husband made a critical or insensitive remark. But because Sandy had developed such profound alexithymia, she didn't consciously register anger or hurt.
She wouldn't yell or argue back.
No, her conscious mind remained totally blank.
Instead, her airways would simply close up. She would literally lose her ability to breathe, and by the time her conscious brain registered the physical emergency of suffocating, it was often too late for a rescue inhaler, and she would find herself rushing to the emergency room.
Her body was screaming for attention in the only language it had left. Because her mind had entirely shut down its emotional awareness.
You know, let me push back on this framework for a second here.
Sure.
When we look at Sandy's history, or really anyone facing completely overwhelming circumstances, isn't numbing out a remarkably effective short-term strategy?
Oh, without a doubt.
Because pulling that circuit breaker is the exact mechanism that allows people to get out of bed, go to their jobs, take care of their children, and just function in society after the unthinkable happens.
It is.
So if the only alternative is being paralyzed by terror every single hour of the day, why is it so dangerous to just keep that circuit breaker pulled and ignore those bad feelings?
You're hitting on the exact reason the brain adopts this strategy in the first place. It is a brilliant, highly effective, short-term survival mechanism.
Yeah.
It keeps the organism moving.
Right.
The danger in the inevitable collapse lies in the long-term sustainability. When you ignore your internal messages, you don't just stop feeling the bad things. You destroy your own capacity for self-regulation. You develop this devastating condition that researchers refer to as the fear of fear itself.
The fear of fear itself.
Yeah. Because you are completely out of tune with your body's baseline, any sudden internal sensation feels alien.
Give me an example of that.
Okay, let's say you walk up a steep flight of stairs.
Yeah.
Naturally, your heart rate increases and your breathing becomes heavier. For someone connected to their body, this is a minor, understood physiological change.
Sure, you just think, wow, I need to hit the treadmill more.
Exactly. But for someone with a severed connection, that sudden pounding in the chest is inexplicable. The conscious mind doesn't know why the body is reacting, so the amygdala, the brain's fear center, interprets this mysterious physical change as a massive incoming threat.
Oh, wow. So you become terrified of your own physiology. You're constantly bracing for an attack from inside your own skin.
Yes, and that internal terror leads to a life ruled by panic attacks and chronic unexplained pain. And because humans desperately need to regulate their nervous systems, if you cannot soothe your body naturally, you will seek out external regulators.
And this is where destructive coping mechanisms take root.
Exactly. Overeating, severe drug addiction, or self-harm, they actually become incredibly functional tools for the traumatized person.
Functional, because they give them control.
Yes. They use these behaviors to replace overwhelming, chaotic, invisible emotional storms with a definable, controllable physical sensation.
Wow. Okay, so if the internal world feels like a minefield, interacting with the external world, especially other people, must become incredibly complicated.
Well, it's a huge challenge.
Right, because if the solution to reclaiming our agency is simply to feel safe in our bodies again, why is it so universally difficult for traumatized individuals to just relax? Why do they often push away the exact people who are trying to offer a comforting hug?
Well, the answer lies in how the mammalian nervous system is designed. We are social creatures. Our neurobiology is wired to regulate distress through social connection.
A calm face, a soothing voice, a gentle touch.
Right. These are the evolutionary signals that tell our bodies we are safe.
Yeah.
But profound trauma fundamentally rewires how the brain perceives human connection.
And Dr. Laney's conducted a second imaging study that illustrates this, right?
She did, and it perfectly and honestly, heartbreakingly illustrates this rewiring. She placed her subjects back into the fMRI scanner and showed them a video of a kindly-looking man.
And the researcher specifically noted that the actor strongly resembled Richard Gere, which I found so interesting.
Yeah, he had a very gentle, safe, sort of grandfatherly demeanor. So in the video, this comforting character approaches the camera in two distinct ways.
Okay.
In one version, he approaches while looking off to the side with an averted gaze. In the second version, he walks forward, making direct, head-on eye contact with the viewer.
Okay, so in the control group, the folks without severe trauma histories, the brain scans reacted exactly as you'd expect to a friendly stranger, right?
Right. When the character made direct eye contact, their prefrontal cortex lit up beautifully. That area is the analytical, assessing part of the brain.
So they were exhibiting natural curiosity, like, who is this person approaching me? What do they want? Do they seem friendly?
Exactly. It is a healthy, inquisitive social engagement response.
But the scans from the traumatized subjects, they revealed an entirely different neurological pathway.
Completely different. When that kindly, comforting face looked directly into their eyes, the frontal lobes, those centers of curiosity and assessment, they showed absolutely zero activation.
Just bypassed entirely.
Entirely. Instead, the brain activity spiked violently deep inside the primitive emotional core of the brain, specifically in an area called the periaqueductal gray.
The periaqueductal gray. And that is a very ancient piece of hardware, isn't it?
Very ancient.
It doesn't assess social cues at all. It generates the deepest, most primal startle responses. It's the command center for cowering, freezing, and hypervigilance.
Right. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the absolute tragedy of this neurological rewiring becomes painfully clear. The brain bypassed the social engagement system entirely and went straight to a life or death alarm state.
Just from witnessing someone making friendly eye contact?
Yes.
Think about the dilemma this creates for human interaction. The most natural, evolutionary way for a human being to calm down after a terrible fright is through physical touch.
We're wired for it.
Right. Being held, clinging to someone we trust, feeling another person's steady heartbeat, that physical contact activates our parasympathetic nervous system. It pumps the brakes on the panic. But for someone whose internal alarm system has been shattered, the very medicine they desperately need to heal is interpreted by their brain as a mortal threat.
They are trapped in a cruel biological paradox. I mean, their conscious mind might deeply crave the comfort of a loved one, but their nervous system physically braces for an assault the moment someone reaches out to hold them.
So if you are listening to this and you are currently working to reclaim your own life from a traumatic past, or perhaps you're trying to support a partner or a child who physically flinches and pulls away when you try to comfort them, this science changes everything.
It really does.
It means understanding that the flinch is not a conscious rejection of your love. Yeah. It is a physiological misfiring. Their biology is literally screaming at them that safety is a trap.
And you cannot simply talk someone out of a biological response. You cannot use logic and reasoning to negotiate with the periaqueductal gray.
Reassurance goes unheard when the alarm bells are ringing that loudly.
Exactly.
So we have to find a completely different doorway into the nervous system. We must pivot away from the problem and focus entirely on the solution. How do we bypass this overwhelmed, panicking fear center? How do we use the physical body to safely rebuild a sense of self and turn the power back on?
The core mission of recovery, as outlined in Van de Kolk's research, is the slow, methodical process of befriending the sensations in your own body.
Befriending the body.
Yes, you have to locate that main circuit breaker you pulled in the basement all those years ago, and slowly, gently, begin flipping the individual switches back on. The objective is to transform from being nobody back into somebody.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the text provides highly specific, actionable tools for this transformation. And the brilliance of these techniques is that they do not feel like intense, grueling psychological therapy.
No, not at all.
They're small, quiet, physical acts of reclaiming your own territory. They're about placing your hands firmly back on the steering wheel of your life and realizing, perhaps for the first time, that you have the power to control your own internal weather.
The foundational step is the simple act of noticing sensations and assigning them a descriptive name.
Okay, what does that look like in practice?
Well, it means moving away from the overwhelming global panic of a thought like, I am terrified, and distilling it into something specific and localized. You practice observing your physiology and saying, when I feel anxious, I notice a tight, crushing sensation directly in the center of my chest.
So you're not judging the sensation. You are not trying to fight it or make it disappear. You are simply observing it as a piece of data.
Exactly. And the mechanics behind that simple observation are profound. The moment you step back to observe and describe a physical sensation, you force the medial prefrontal cortex, that vital watchtower of the brain we discussed earlier, to boot back up.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Right. You bring the analytical mind online to oversee the panic, which immediately begins to shrink the fear from an all-consuming monster down to a manageable physical symptom.
And beyond naming sensations, there are direct physical interventions too. The text highlights the practice of tapping acupressure points.
Yes.
Tapping, which involves physically tapping on specific areas of your own body, such as the collarbone or the side of the hand. Why does that work?
Tapping is a powerful mechanical tool because it sends a rhythmic grounding signal directly into the nervous system. Yeah. The amygdala, the fear center, operates in chaotic, spiraling loops of panic.
Right.
When you introduce a steady, predictable, rhythmic physical sensation, a sensation that you are entirely in control of generating, it acts as an interrupt code. It signals to the primitive brain that the physical boundaries of the body are intact and that the environment is currently safe enough to allow for rhythmic movement.
Wow. And breathing is another core pillar, obviously, but the text emphasizes a very specific focus. The out-breath.
The out-breath is key.
Taking a breath in and then intentionally slowly extending the exhale. Let's look at the biology of why the exhale is the secret weapon here.
It comes down to the vagus nerve and the parasympathetic nervous system. Every time you inhale, you are slightly activating your sympathetic nervous system, the gas pedal.
Because it increases your heart rate to bring in oxygen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But every time you exhale, you engage the parasympathetic nervous system, the body's brake pedal. By intentionally drawing out the length of your exhale, you are manually pumping the brakes on your own heart rate.
And combining this extended out breath with rhythmic movement, like slowly lifting your arms up and down in sync with your lungs, similar to the practices found in Qigong or Tai Chi, that forces the erratic mind and the panicked body to synchronize their frequencies.
It's all about that synchronization.
Another tool detailed in the research that feels incredibly empowering is the concept of establishing islands of safety within your own physical form.
Oh, I love this concept.
Yeah, so when a trauma response is triggered, the chest might feel like it's in a vice, or the throat might close up in a panic. The instinct is to wage war against those terrifying sensations.
Naturally.
But instead, the technique asks you to scan your body to find a single location that feels okay, a place that is neutral or even pleasant.
Perhaps it is just your hands.
Exactly. You focus all of your conscious attention on your hands. You notice the warmth of your palms. You slowly flex your fingers and feel the strength in your knuckles. You create a physical beachhead of safety, an anchored point in your own body.
And that technique builds a crucial neurological capacity called pendulation.
Pendulation?
Yeah, pendulation is the ability to intentionally swing your conscious attention back and forth between a place of distress and a place of safety. By focusing on the strength of your hands, you prove to your panicked brain that the terror does not own your entire physical form.
You break the illusion of total catastrophe.
Precisely. And sometimes the physical intervention is remarkably simple. Dr. Kolk details moments where a patient is collapsing in a chair, folding inward into silence and submission. And his intervention is to simply ask them to notice what happens internally when they sit up straight.
Just sitting up.
Just the sheer muscular act of straightening the spine, lifting the chin, and expanding the chest completely alters the sensory data being fed into the brain.
Changing the posture changes the internal map.
Exactly. But the vital rule governing all of these techniques, the naming, the tapping, the breathing, the posture, is the absolute necessity of going slow.
Right. You can't rush this.
The goal of recovery is never to flood the system or force a dramatic, tearful breakthrough. If you push the nervous system too hard, too fast, the brain will interpret the intervention itself as a threat, and the circuit breaker will trip all over again.
You have to gently, patiently teach your biology that it is finally safe to feel.
Because the ultimate objective of this work is not mere survival. Living numb is surviving. The goal of befriending the body is to wildly expand your capacity for pleasure, for sensuality, for deep connection, and for meaning.
Yes.
The human nervous system cannot selectively numb emotion. If you numb the terror and the grief, you automatically numb the joy and the love. By slowly welcoming physical sensations back in, you invite the joy back into the house.
You are systematically turning the lights, the heat, and the music back on, room by room. It is a revelation to realize that the body is not the enemy. The body is the only bridge back to yourself.
It is the only vehicle we get for this journey. Learning to walk across that bridge, consciously feeling the weight and texture of every single footstep, is the true essence of healing.
Wow. Let's summarize the territory we have covered today in this deep dive. We started by examining the idling brain, uncovering the mechanical reality that, in the aftermath of trauma, the brain shuts down our self-sensing areas to survive the unbearable agony of physical terror.
We explored how pulling that internal circuit breaker steals our agency.
Right, leaving us emotionally blind and disconnected from our own intuition. We analyze the tragic rewiring that turns the promise of a comforting human connection into a biological threat.
But ultimately, we discover the mechanics of reclamation.
Yes. By slowly and intentionally befriending our physical sensations, through naming our distress, engaging the outbreath, and building islands of safety, we can rewrite our internal neurobiology. We hold the power to go from nobody back to somebody.
It represents a monumental shift in perspective. You are no longer viewing yourself as a helpless victim of a broken mind, but rather as an active, capable participant in healing a remarkably adaptive nervous system.
As we wrap up our time together, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over. Dr. van der Kolk's research establishes an undeniable biological truth. Our sense of purpose, our direction in life, and our agency rely entirely on being physically aware of our internal body sensations. You must be present in your body to be in charge of your life.
The biology demands physical presence.
Given that truth, consider the architecture of modern life for a moment. Think about how millions of us spend hours and hours every single day living completely disembodied lives.
Oh, absolutely.
We stare rigidly into glowing screens, swiping on phones, living entirely up in the abstract space of our heads, completely ignoring the physical world around us and the subtle physical sensations inside us.
It's a huge problem.
Are we, as a culture, inadvertently mimicking the symptoms of trauma? Are we actively numbing our own internal compasses and abandoning our islands of safety simply by participating in the modern digital age?
It is a vital question for our era. We must ask if we are voluntarily conditioning ourselves to live as brains in jars.
It's definitely something to seriously consider the next time you lose 3 hours to an endless scroll and wonder why you feel so hollow and disconnected afterward.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. Before you close this out and move on to the next task in your day, I encourage you to take one slow, intentional out-breath. Feel the air empty from your lungs. Notice the structure of the chair supporting your weight. Feel the solid ground pressing up against the bottom of your feet. You are right here, right now, in your body. Have a great day.